Welcome to Satsang.
Hello, Vishrant. Could you talk about the topic, how to use your relationship for higher consciousness?
Yes, I learned more about what's required for higher consciousness in relationship than probably in any other sphere, because ultimately for enlightenment and for higher consciousness and for awakening of the heart, what we need to learn is surrender. And this is very difficult for us to learn because it's a non-doing. We learn surrender through the practice of acceptance, the practice of letting go. And when we're in relationship with another human being, we're always going to have differences. We're always going to have different opinions from time to time. There's always going to be a time when our partner is doing something that we don't agree with, or saying something we don't agree with. And it's in those times that we can either practice resistance or practice surrender. Practice acceptance or practice resistance. Practice being right or practice letting go. And so if we want to use our relationships in a healthy way, we can use them to, hang on, we can use them to, can I just talk to my assistants for a second? Have I been signed out? Can you still hear me?
Yes, you're online and we can still hear you.
Okay, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I got a signal saying I'd been signed out of the webinar.
Okay. No, you're still live, and there's nothing happened on this end.
Okay, well that's really odd. I've still got a big sign that says I've been signed out and that I need to sign in.
Can you close that window?
I can, but I'm just wondering what's happening here with you guys, because I'm not touching anything.
We're not either.
Okay.
It might be someone else playing with the account.
Would that be Mahan by any chance?
Probably. I'll tell him to stop.
Thank you. So that's a little bit like a relationship I have. Not everything goes as planned. And can we accept the things that go wrong or the things that we don't agree with? Or are we going to get righteous and go into resistance and contraction? If we're willing to actually let go, we'll start to see the belief systems that come in play that have expectations attached to them, that when they're not met, we contract. And so in seeing those belief systems, we can start to undo the belief systems that cause contraction in us, cause resistance in our lives. And so effectively, a relationship with another human being can be used to help raise your consciousness levels simply by not resisting, simply by accepting and seeing what the mind is up to and undoing whatever obstacles are in the way. Anything that contracts us, anything that puts us in resistance, you could clearly say is an obstacle towards higher consciousness, is an obstacle towards enlightenment. Because the mind needs to be able to support what is found. When awareness finds itself, when beingness finds itself, it needs to be supported in that. In that the mind doesn't want to be attracting attention back to itself, awareness away from awareness, awareness away from beingness, by going into massive contraction because it doesn't agree with the way the world is. And so developing an equanimous mind occurs as a result of the practice of acceptance. and the seeing through of belief systems and undoing the ones that keep contracting you. And this can commonly be called the work, if you like, or really just removing the obstacles that are in the way. But unless this work is done, unless the obstacles are removed, I don't feel enlightenment is a possibility. If we have a mind that constantly contracts, awareness is going to go back to it. Beingness is going to go back to that mind. Consciousness is going to go back to the mind and probably away from itself. And so whatever relationship we're in, we can actually use that relationship to help us raise our consciousness levels by, instead of resisting, accepting. If we fully accept anything, it's all over. The drama is over. The story is over. It's only when we're not in full acceptance that there is a continuance of something. And so it's really up to you. What are you going to do? How are you going to be in your relationships? Are you going to be right? Are you going to be righteous? Are you going to be arrogant? Or are you going to be accepting? That doesn't mean that you don't communicate. It doesn't mean that you don't put a point across, but it does mean that you do it from a place of openness instead of a place of closure. Because the moment we're in resistance to our partner, we've closed. The moment we've contracted, we're closed. And so in life, if we want life to flow, we operate from a place of acceptance, and then life flows. No matter how hard life might be, if we're in a place of acceptance, life flows. The moment we contract, the moment we go into resistance, life becomes a little stuck for us because we're caught in our own minds in right, wrong, good, bad. And of course, there's no bridges being built in that either. In practicing acceptance, we're quite willing to build bridges to make it work. In practicing resistance, or I'm right, you're wrong, we're not in bridge building mode, we're actually in bridge burning mode. And so that's destructive to relationships. The practice of acceptance inside a relationship supports the relationship. It also supports higher consciousness. But that's up to you. If all you can do is be right, you're probably going to ruin your relationship. Acceptance is the oil that makes it work smoothly. And once again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're closing down communication and you're allowing people to walk all over you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about approaching life in relationship with another from a place of openness rather than a place of closure. Are there any questions, any statements, or any challenges to this teaching today?
The first question from a viewer is a relationship still needed once you're enlightened?
Can you read the question to me again? You broke up. I think you might be too close to your microphone.
The question was, is a relationship still needed once you're enlightened?
I don't think you understand what enlightenment is. Enlightenment is freedom. The I disappears. The somebody that wanted to get enlightened is no longer there. Where there was once a somebody, there is now nobody there. There's no somebody anymore. You know yourself as beingness. You know yourself as truth, which means you know yourself as everything, everything, everything and nothing. Relationship is not needed. As a matter of fact, nothing is needed, not even life. The mind has surrendered itself unconditionally. It is over. It is an end. We're talking about true freedom. if there's still a need for things, then enlightenment hasn't really occurred. Maybe partial enlightenment. But in full enlightenment, there is no need of anything or anybody. It is over. You have given your life to truth. It's no longer yours, it's truth's. It's no longer yours from the perspective of the little I. It's over. And so it is the ultimate freedom to be awake. And it's up to you. Wake up.
Satya has a question.
Hello, Satya.
Hi, Vishrant. Vishrant, what is the importance of relation in between spiritual teacher and disciple?
What is the
Important in between spiritual teacher, relation in between spiritual teacher and disciple?
Okay. So I talk about my relationship with my spiritual teachers, and they were ones of love affairs. In that I loved them completely. And in that love, I followed their instruction. And in that love, they passed something to me. In that love, there was a transmission of the lamp, the transmission of beingness. So what is here, what is aware here, could become aware of itself. But that was done in a love affair with truth, because the master is truth. The master might look like a person, but they are no longer a person. They are truth. They're knowing themselves as beingness. It's just truth. The person is gone. And so the disciple falls in love with truth, basically. And in that love affair, the disciple gives themselves 100% to truth. Another word for truth is God. The disciple gives their life to God. And so anybody that has awoken has given their life to truth, or given their life to God. They don't keep their life anymore. It's over. This is also why they're free. That part that gave is now surrendered. There's an absence of that part now. And so someone who's awake is existing as beingness, not as an I any longer. It is over. And it is in that relationship between the disciple and the master that can occur, where the disciple gives their life to truth, gives their life to God in that love affair. It is the most beautiful thing, because love is the most beautiful thing. It's the only thing that is valuable here. Nothing else has value but love. It is in that love affair that the mind prepares to unconditionally surrender, which is like a death to truth, to beingness, to God, whatever you want to call it. But it's an end.
Thanks, Vishrant. Yeah, this love affair is beautiful. But Vishrant, it's just a bit personal question. Why you keep me away from you?
Why am I what? Sorry?
Why you keep me away from you?
I'm sorry, I'm missing a word there. Why am I something or rather from you? That's all I'm hearing. What are you actually asking? Can you ask again?
No, that's fine, Vishrant. I'm just asking why you are keeping away from. Why you are keeping away from you? Why you are keeping away me from you?
I don't keep you away from me. You keep you away from me by living in India. You have always been welcome here, Satya. and it's not true. I am with you. Tune in and see.
Thanks, Vishrant. Thanks for your love.
Okay, Satya.
The next question is from a viewer. How can I help my partner to become more conscious without taking on a teacher role?
You don't want to ever be a teacher. I got given this book by Osho when I took sannyas in 1982 or 3, and the book's title was "Look Where I'm Pointing, Don't Bite My Finger." And I didn't really understand it at the time, but any time you start giving someone free advice, there is a chance you're going to get your finger pointed, the pointing finger bitten. That's actually what's likely to happen. Setting yourself up as the teacher of your own partner is very, very dangerous, because basically you're equals and you can help each other towards higher consciousness. You can give each other feedback on what each other's up to from time to time if the invitation is there. But setting yourself up as a teacher is probably the most dangerous thing you can do. You're likely to get your fingers bitten.
The next question is, do you think it's a problem if my partner is not interested in truth and enlightenment as much as I am?
In a way, it is a problem, and in a way it can be handled depending on how your partner handles your interest. Sometimes a partner who's not into truth will support the other partner who is into truth, and sometimes they won't. And if they won't, that becomes very difficult. It can be a reason for conflict or argument. It's always best to be with people who are going in the same direction as yourself. There's no doubt about that in whatever endeavor you're doing in life. It can get very, very difficult if you're with someone who's not in the truth, particularly if you decide to put truth first. And the seeker that finds themselves as truth, the seeker who wakes up, always, always, always puts truth first.
The next question is, what do you mean when you speak about the need for the seeker to stand alone? And how does this occur in relationship?
Okay. The world we live in is not that conscious. And when you start going for higher consciousness and you start achieving it, you're highly unlikely to be supported by the world we live in, because we're not living in monasteries or ashrams. The people I talk to are lay people who have families, who have jobs in the marketplace. And it's highly unlikely they're going to get supported in their spiritual quest by the people that they work with, by the people who are related to them, by the people they live with. It's highly unlikely because they're not into it and they don't understand it and they think you're a little bit strange. So you have to be able to stand alone in surrender. And that's difficult, but it's a requirement. You can't be pulled here and there and everywhere away from truth if you're into it. You actually have to put truth first, and you have to be able to stand alone in surrender. Alone meaning not supported. If you're with a spiritual teacher or master, you're with someone who will support you in that awakening, in that quest. And if you're with a community of people who are into it, a sangha, they will support you in that quest as well. If you're with a partner who will support you, that is optimal. If you're not with a partner who can support you, it is difficult. It is difficult. There is no doubt about that. But that goes for anything in life, really, in business as well as music as well as in art. If you're with someone who's not supporting what you're doing, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but you still do need to be able to learn to stand alone in surrender. And so you don't get pulled away. And so you keep truth as number one.
The next question is, do you think that having kids can be an obstacle to being a seeker of truth?
Heck no. More opportunities for surrender. I had 3 children, and I didn't see them as obstacles at all. Of course, they needed attention and they needed my awareness with them a lot. But at the same time, I still had my spiritual practices of meditation, self-inquiry, and openness. And they didn't interfere with any of those because I was involved in meditation and self-inquiry when they were asleep or they were at school or whether they hadn't got up yet. And with the practice of openness, well, having kids is wonderful for the practice of openness because kids get into all sorts of things they shouldn't. And you can be open with them and still put the boundaries in place. You do not have to contract. You do not have to go in resistance. It's another way of learning how to practice, how to be accepting through the practice of acceptance. Up to you.
The next question is, putting truth first before my partner and my kids seems a bit selfish at times. What is your take on that?
Putting truth first. Okay. Here's the take. If you wake up, would that be good for your kids and your partner or not? You see, to wake up, you have to sacrifice your life for truth because you surrender unconditionally to truth. You don't get to keep anything. You surrender unconditionally to truth. And then you become a light for all those who want to see in the darkness, including your partner, including your children. So which is best for them, really? Which is best for your children, really? Oh, on that note, there's no such thing as selfish enlightenment. That's not a possibility. The self that you know as you doesn't make it to enlightenment. The self that you know as you sacrifices itself, surrenders itself unconditionally. So it's not selfish to wake up. It's a completely unselfish act.
The next question is, my partner betrayed me and I feel empty inside. How do I find my joy again?
Accept the betrayal. I have been betrayed so many times, and what I learned is that human beings betray, whether it's partners or friends or children or business deals you do. It's human nature to betray, and it is us being out of touch with reality to think that it should be different. I accept betrayal because it is what it is. It's there. It's unrealistic of me to think that it shouldn't be there because it is there. And everybody has these weaknesses. You yourself have betrayed. And if you haven't, that's highly unlikely. Every time we have a pornographic thought about someone besides our partner, in a way we have betrayed. It is okay. Make it okay. Or suffer. Your choice. If you can't accept what is, you will suffer. If you can accept what is, suffering ends. Acceptance is the answer, and there isn't another one. That's it. And that's in your hands because you're the one that can accept or not, irregardless of what the other is doing. You're the one creating your suffering because of your resistance to what is.
The next question is, I find I have a greater desire for sexual relations within my marriage than my wife. How can I let go of that desire and find contentment without it?
I find I have greater desire for sexual relations within my marriage than my wife. That doesn't make sense, sorry. How can I let go of that desire and find... I'm sorry, the question actually doesn't make sense. There's some words missing in it.
I think the question might mean they have a higher sex drive than their wife. How would they let go of that desire?
I see what you're saying. They have a higher sex drive than their wife, so you can't let desire... Okay. You have to accept what is, or suffer incredibly. Your choice. You have a greater sex drive than your wife. So what? That's what is. You can either make it a problem or you can accept it as it is. Your choice, really. Your choice. If you don't accept it as it is, you're going to suffer. You're going to turn yourself into a victim of your wife's lower sex drive. And then you'll probably try and hurt her because you'll get bitter and resentful, but all because of your own story, not because of reality. Just because someone has a lower sex drive than you doesn't mean they're any less than you or any more than you. Acceptance is the answer. Up to you. Accept or suffer.
The next question is how to help my partner deal with grief in a healthy way, which is healing rather than adding to the pain.
I don't really understand the question. Sorry.
I think what they mean is if my partner is going through grief, how do I help them deal with this rather than adding to the pain?
I have no idea what they're talking about when they're talking about adding to the pain. So the question is so ambiguous, I refuse to answer it.
We have a question from a viewer. Is attraction to someone apart from your partner have to be pornographic?
No, you can make it not pornographic if you like. You can keep the clothes on in your mind. Of course, it doesn't have to be pornographic. I think the question came from my talk about betrayal. It's like, gosh, really, it is human nature to betray. And if you haven't seen it inside yourself, you simply have not looked.
The next question is, often I find myself looking at my relationship to make me feel complete. Is this possible?
I've heard the statement, you complete me, which is, makes you feel good about you. You want to be complete, you want to be whole, accept yourself totally as you are and love yourself. And then you become self-nourishing, which has nothing to do with anything outside of you. As a matter of fact, if you are not self-nourishing, if you're a beggar looking for love outside of you, well, you're always going to be looking for love outside of you. You're always going to be in problems. The best thing you can do for you is find a way to accept you and love you as you are. And then when you meet someone, you can love them because you're not coming in as a beggar. You're coming in with love. You're coming in with something to give rather than something to take. And so when we say someone completes us, it means there's something missing in us. And that missing would be self-nourishing. When we're self-nourishing, love starts to overflow in us. And then we can share that love. And that is giving. And that is very beautiful. Now that means as a psyche, we've actually self-accepted completely. Have a look. Have a look and see if you're self-nourishing, or if it is that you need something from someone else to make you feel nourished. Because when two people come together who are both self-nourishing, wow, they're just bringing love in. They're just two givers coming together rather than two beggars or a beggar and a giver coming together. It all begins with self-acceptance. How are you inside of yourself with you? How loving are you with you? Because if you're loving with you, you're self-nourishing. And then that gets shared. Then you're a giver rather than a beggar.
The next question is, how do I not get attached to my relationship?
It's almost impossible for a human being not to get attached inside a relationship because it's chemical bonding. Some people say, oh, I have love at first sight. No, you do not have love at first sight. You have chemical bonding at first sight. That's where a whole pile of chemistry goes off inside of you and blinds you to the obvious faults of the other, so you can have sex, have babies, and keep the survival of the species going. People love to call that love, but really it is just hormones. It's just a chemical fireworks, if you like. And after a certain period of time, that wears off, and then you start to see the person that you're with for what they're really like, rather than through these hormone-filled eyes. And then you have to decide whether you're going to stay with them or not. Once you've seen their obvious faults, which for some reason or another you didn't see before because you were blinded by hormones. So everybody gets attached in relationships because of this primal bonding that occurs. If you don't want to be attached in a relationship, wake up. And then you're not attached to anything. It's over.
The next question is, after being in a relationship for many years, I find that it feels quite stale. How can I bring present moment awareness into my relationship to liven it up?
If your relationship feels quite stale, it is because there is no present moment awareness in the relationship. Because if you are present to reality in the moment, everything is fresh, always fresh. It is only when we are living in our heads that everything becomes stale and seemingly repetitive, which is actually not a possibility, because everything that happens is new every moment. And so you asked me about present moment awareness. It sounds like there's a lack of present moment awareness in your relationship. It sounds like you're actually just projecting constantly onto the other and thinking that somehow the same thing is happening over and over again, which is actually not possible. Every moment is fresh. If you truly come into the moment, everybody is new every moment. But if you're living in your head, projecting, that's not the case. You get bored because you're just projecting the same thing over and over again, thinking there's some kind of repetition, which in fact there is not, because there can't be. Every moment is new. Every moment is fresh. This is the power of now.
A question from a viewer is it possible to express anger without indulging it or personalizing it?
Anger is an indulgence. Anger is where you get to blame someone else or something else or yourself for something. It's where you get to be a victim. You can't be angry without being a victim. You can't be angry without blaming. Of course, it's always personal for you because you turn yourself into a victim of something. And anger is a form of violence. When you direct anger at somebody, you're directing violence at them. And so when you talk about indulging, yeah, it's an indulgence, all right. Have a closer look at what anger is. You cannot be angry without blaming. You cannot be angry without being a victim of something. Stuff happens. People do things. We can be a victim of it or not. We have a choice there. We have a choice to be angry or not. And that's up to you. Anger is probably one of the most destructive forces on the planet. When we bring it inside our relationships, we're the one destroying our relationships, not the other who's done something that we don't agree with. Anger is the great destroyer, the great burner of bridges. You have a look and see. Have a look and see the mechanism of anger. It cannot exist without you blaming.
The next question is, how would you teach your kids about higher consciousness?
Very simple. Gain higher consciousness. Kids copy you. If you have higher consciousness and your kids are hanging out with you, they're going to see higher consciousness. They're going to see the role of how higher consciousness works in the world. Children live and learn by copying their parents. If all you do is wallow around in lower consciousness, that's all you're teaching your children. If you start operating from higher consciousness, you're teaching them another way to be in the world. You have become their best teachers. That's up to you. Whatever sins the parents have, they do pass to the children one way or another. You really want your children to have higher consciousness, gain it and live it yourself.
A question from a viewer is, sometimes when my partner chews loudly while eating, I find it very irritating. Where do I start if I want to accept the things that I don't like about my partner?
Yeah, look, I used to be quite trippy when I was younger, and I found that just going to the cinema and someone was eating chips close to me, it would irritate me and take my awareness away from what was on the big screen. And but what I learned was that if I had a look inside myself and had a look at what belief systems were in play, I could start to undo them. And I found that in undoing belief systems inside of myself about the things that got me, those things no longer got me. And so I undid all the belief systems that I could find inside myself. And I found that things that used to trip me up no longer tripped me up because I'd undone me. I hadn't tried to change outside of me. I hadn't stood up in the theater and turned around and said, "Stop chewing crisps." Inside of myself, I'd undone the belief systems that they shouldn't be chewing chips and they shouldn't be chewing them loudly. I made it okay. And in that making it okay, I became free of those trips. It's up to you. It's your trip, not the person who's chewing loudly. You're the one who has a problem. You're the one that can solve it inside of you, not outside of you. Make it okay. Be okay with it. Undo any belief systems that it's not okay and be free. Your choice.
The next question is, when my wife looks at other men passing by when we are out together, I feel jealousy and rage. How can I stop this, as it's very destructive to my relationship and creates a lot of problems?
Yeah, right. Yeah, jealousy is a very destructive process. I got in touch with jealousy when I was very young and realized how dangerous it was. And so I decided not to support jealousy in any way, shape, or form inside of myself because it's so destructive. People kill each other over it. And it's going to be really, really up to you, because you can't control your wife from looking at other men if she wants to. That's her prerogative, her right. It's not like she's doing anything wrong. The trip is in you. You've got a problem, and you're creating that problem with your belief systems. You're creating that problem with your jealousy. How about accepting that your wife likes to look at other men? What's so wrong with that, except in your mind? You know, it's up to you what's going on with you. It will be very destructive and destroy your relationship, your choice, and then do it with the next one as well, because it doesn't stop. Jealousy is so destructive, and you're responsible for your jealousy. How about just accepting that your wife likes to look at other men? Stop blaming her, because you wouldn't be enraged unless you were blaming. You're doing the blaming, not her. You're putting the effort into blaming, not her. You're becoming a victim of her looking. You're doing that. You're responsible 100% for your feelings and what you're doing in your mind, not her. I'll leave you with that.
A viewer has asked, I like being in a relationship, but I also want to dedicate my time to truth. How do I balance my romantic relationship with my dedication to truth?
Put truth first. If you're a seeker, you put truth first. And the relationship is there, and you give the relationship what it needs to work as well. But you put truth first. You see, there's nothing worth doing on this plane except waking up. Everything else is wasting time. Put all effort into waking up, and you can be in relationship, and you can love your partner, and you can take care of them, and you can practice openness with them, and you can practice acceptance with them. You can practice all the things that you need to practice for higher consciousness with them, but put truth first. Waking up is more important than anything else on this plane. Nothing else is more important than waking up. Become a light so others can see. This planet is in darkness. It is in chaos, and it is in a destructive mode. The only thing that is going to save it now is higher consciousness, and that's up to you, not someone else. And higher consciousness occurs when we wake up, when awareness becomes aware of itself, when we know ourselves as beingness. And then we are a light in the darkness for those who cannot see yet.
The next question that has been asked is it possible to be angry or sad while still being detached and not being in an emotional mess?
Is it possible to be angry or sad and still being detached and not being in a... Well, if you're angry, you're lost in a dream of blame. How can you say you're not lost? You are so lost. If you're angry, you're in a nightmare. You're in a dream of blame where you're a victim somewhere. Sadness is a little different. Sadness is a true emotion, whereas anger tends to be a defense system rather than a true emotion. Sadness is what we feel when we've lost something. It's a feeling of loss. Anger happens when we blame something. We're doing something to create anger. We're blaming, and it covers pain. So something touches us, and rather than feel a touch, we get angry. And in the anger, We feel empowered, so we don't have to feel the helplessness and the hopelessness in whatever's being touched. So anger is more a defense system than anything else. It stops us from feeling something. It empowers us, whereas sadness is a true feeling. It's a feeling of loss. And we can be detached and feel and experience sadness and not be an emotional mess. Absolutely. But with anger, we are creating anger. We're not necessarily creating sadness. It happens as a result of loss. But anger needs our support to exist. We have to be in blame. We have to be a victim somewhere. The moment you remove blame, you're taking the fuel away from anger. If you're truly detached, you would never get angry. That's not possible. Anger's a nasty dream that people take themselves into, where inside that dream they're a victim of something. And really, you take away the dream and there's nothing happening. It's all created. Yes, you can remain detached from sadness and not be an emotional mess and still feel it. Absolutely. Absolutely. But anger, no. Anger is a dream. If you truly have detachment, you don't have anger.
The next question is, how do I not worry about my 5 to 10 year plan for my family?
Continue worrying. Your choice. See, I have plans from time to time. I make a plan, it doesn't take me long. And then when the time comes to execute the plan, it's executed. There's no requirement for thought in between the two. In other words, there's no need for worry. Worry is optional. That's your choice. You don't have to worry. Worry isn't going to change anything. All it's going to do is make you suffer. Your choice. Don't worry. If you have a habit of worrying, it's going to be hard to stop, but stop it. Stop supporting worry. Stop it. Or continue to worry and suffer. You're creating your reality. Nobody's doing it to you. There's nothing wrong with having a 5 or 10 year plan and executing the parts of it when they need to be executed. But worrying about it, that's absolutely optional. That's your choice.
The next question is, do you think it's easier to wake up if you're celibate, to avoid distractions from the quest for truth?
Maybe. I don't know. I never became a monk. I never took celibacy vows. I don't know. I do know this, that what's required for awakening is unconditional surrender. Sexuality plays no part in that. Or if you can practice acceptance inside a relationship with a woman or a man, you're actually practicing what will take you to higher consciousness. You're preparing the mind for enlightenment. Now, if you don't have a relationship with a man or a woman, there are other things to surrender to, so both ways work. I don't see a huge advantage in either way, because if a person is willing to surrender, willing to accept their partner or whatever their life circumstances, they are preparing the mind for enlightenment. I do not believe we need to be celibate to become enlightened, because that's just not the case. That's just not true. Whether it's an advantage to be celibate or not, I really don't know. Not my experience. I know that inside relationship, we have every opportunity to learn what we need to learn to raise our consciousness levels, because we have something we can accept. We have something that is going to be different than what we want from time to time and give us opportunities to practice acceptance and surrender. Up to you.
A viewer has asked, Tirtha said that monogamy is not a natural state for humans, but a controlling constraint imposed by churches. What do you think?
I think Tirtha was a shit stirrer. and he had a very high sexual life. If you really want chaos in your life, be polygamous. It works really well. If you really want no peace whatsoever, get together with more than one partner. It works really well. Yeah. It may be true that men are not monogamous and women are not monogamous. That may very well be true. But if you're looking for any peace in your life, monogamy works way better than polygamy. And as far as it being imposed by churches, how about a little bit of common sense? Forget the churches, forget religion, forget what they say. How about a little bit of common sense? Anybody who has been involved with many partners will attest to the fact that it is way more difficult than being associated with one. This is just common sense. I love Tirtha. He's brilliant, but I don't agree with him. I think it's, if you really want to have a peaceful life, have one partner. And if you happen to be a male and you're with a woman, the old saying goes, happy wife, happy life.
The next question is, I find myself fluctuating between the path of spirituality and wanting a relationship to go well. Are these paths mutually exclusive?
No, not at all. If you want your relationship to go well, then practice building bridges inside the relationship rather than burning them. And to build bridges inside any relationship, we have to practice acceptance of the other. In practicing acceptance of the other, we are doing what's required to raise our consciousness levels. And so they can work hand in hand. They don't have to be against each other at all. Our relationship can absolutely aid in raising consciousness levels if you're willing to use it that way. But if all you're going to do in relationship is want to be right, want to be arrogant, oh, you're just going to destroy the relationship. End up with a relationship probably based on a business deal regarding land and children rather than a relationship based on love. When we bring acceptance into our relationships, love can flourish. When there is no acceptance, when there is just resistance, there is no love. There's just business deals. So I see them as working hand in hand, particularly if you're practicing acceptance.
A viewer has asked, how can I be okay with my partner's mental illness?
Well, try not being okay with it and see where it takes you. If your partner has mental illness, are you in acceptance of that or are you not? If you're not in acceptance of it, well, there is a serious problem. There is the mental illness and now there is you being the problem because of your lack of acceptance of what is. I think psychologists say 1 in 4 people have some form of mental illness, some form of mental disability. And so there's an awful lot of people out there who have some problems. And I don't think that's even referring to all the people who are broken, because we're all programmed relatively badly. So acceptance is the key. If we resist, we suffer. And in that resistance, quite often it doesn't change anything. It just causes suffering for us. Our life can become beautiful when we support heart. And heart is supported by openness, not resistance. If we can practice acceptance, we can remain open and we can support heart. And the most beautiful thing on this plane is love. Loving is just so divine. It is the true jewel of consciousness. And it's going to be completely and utterly up to you, because you create your reality with the way you think. If you're in non-acceptance, that's the way you think. If you're in acceptance, that's the way you think. You're responsible.
The next question is it true I can only really be in a relationship once I learn to be alone?
No, you can be in a relationship at any time. As a matter of fact, you were in a relationship when you were born with your mother and probably your father and maybe siblings and the dog and the cat. We're very social beings, human beings. We're in relationship most of our lives, one way or another, whether that's in business or a personal relationship, or even just a relationship with the girl down at the petrol station when we say hello and goodbye. We're very social beings. So being alone helps in this. If you can actually be alone and be happy, you're not going to have too many problems inside relationship, because you're not coming in as a beggar, as someone who needs someone else to make themselves feel happy. And so it's not a bad idea for you to spend some time alone before you get into a relationship, to see how you are with you, to see if you can be alone without this constant neediness to have someone else fulfill those needs. Being self-sufficient, self-contained, then when you come into a relationship, you actually have something to give rather than something that you want to take. So there's nothing wrong with spending time alone, but you don't necessarily need to. Relationships work because people come in as givers. If you're in a relationship, find your heart and become a giver, because when you do find your heart, that's all you're going to want to do anyway, is give. It's very beautiful. If all you're doing is coming into a relationship needing the other's support, needing the other's love, you've come in as a beggar. And if they've come in the same way, well, you have two beggars together and you basically have probably a loveless relationship. Being alone allows us to find a way to be with ourselves, to be self-accepting, to be self-nourishing. And then we have a gift, because that nourishment will flow on to the other. So it's an advantage to be able to be alone, but it's not necessary. It's up to you. You're going to create your reality, nobody else.
And the last question for today is, I find at times I have an addictive demand for my partner to be a certain way. How can I let go of that attachment and be okay with things just as they are?
Don't let it go. Hang on to the attachment, and then it won't be too long before you'll need a new relationship, because you'll destroy the one you're in. Anytime we addictively demand anything, we become unreasonable. Anytime we addictively demand anything, we're in resistance to life and we're out of touch with our hearts. You want your relationship to work, find a way to be open. And there's no room for addictive demands in openness. If you find that you can be open, you can find love. And in love, you'll just want to serve the other, because that's the beauty of love. That's how it affects the mind. You just want to take care of everyone and everything. And that's the way of the heart. That's the beauty way. That's the best way to live on this planet, the way of the heart. But it does demand that you be open, because in openness, love is perceived. In closure, it's barely noticed, if at all. When you're addictively demanding anything, you're too closed. That's just that. Thank you for Satsang. Good to see you brave hearts here today.